Thank you, Desmina. Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored and thankful for the opportunity to be part of this discussion here today. Let me start with a broader perspective. When I first entered diplomacy almost 3 decades ago, I was often the only woman in the room. Today, progress has been made, but not nearly enough. According to the UN Women's Statistics, less than 1 in 4 ambassadors worldwide are women, and women still represent under 20% of heads of delegations in international negotiations. As of 2024, women made up only 21% of UN permanent representatives in New York, which is 7% of all ambassadors since 1947 being women, and 73 countries having never appointed a female representative to the UN. And this challenge is not confined to the global south. OECD data shows that across advanced democracies, only about 1/3 of top government leadership roles are held by women. Here I can admit that I am a lucky one, because when I was in the government of Estonia, half of the members of our government were women. And it was a bit surprise to me because it made us very popular. I got asked interviews, can you explain how it happened, how do you feel? So it was really something special, which I have to admit I didn't feel and didn't think of it in advance. Even our most gender-respective societies still fall short of parity, as we also heard about the previous speaker, that if you don't target this question directly, then it will not happen. This reminds us that commitment must be matched with concrete policies, accountability, and leadership. These numbers remind us also that diplomacy is still far from reflecting the societies it serves. Representing people, yet women, who make up half of the world's population, remain significantly underrepresented at the negotiation table. I have seen both the obstacles and the transformative power that women bring into diplomacy. And I believe we need more of both, and let me share some of the personal stories from that time. First, I believe that female diplomats need good role models and also supportive women who have made a career for themselves. Throughout my diplomatic career, I have had pleasure and honor of meeting distinguished women who have inspired me along the way. During my first posting in Italy in the 90s, the director of my regional office at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was a woman. In one of our meetings, she recalled that women had only been allowed to enter the diplomatic service in Italy since 1974. And I recall that this discussion took place in the 90s. As a young diplomat, I found our conversations very inspiring and continued to follow her career. She later became Italy's first female Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I'm really happy that I met her at the early stage of my career and also in the beginning of her career. Secondly, thinking about this topic reminded me of an episode that occurred when I was Estonian Foreign Minister at the United Nations Security Council, where Estonia was an elected member in 2021-2022. A discussion about an upcoming regional conflict was about to begin, and as it is usual in diplomacy, the parties involved tried to present their positions to the Security Council members beforehand. So I spoke with the parties involved. One country's views were presented by a female minister. She centered her arguments on her people and the food shortages associated with the problem. At the same time, a male colleague from another country framed his arguments around the idea that as the problem grew, he might have difficulty keeping his army in check. For me, this conversation illustrates different perspectives that men and women bring to the table, and more importantly, the importance of including women in negotiations so that diplomacy can contribute to peaceful conflict resolution that spares human lives. However, I don't want to sound naive here. We also see, unfortunately, the situations in which women are involved in inhuman war crimes as well. Thirdly, I would like to touch briefly on informal clubs and networks, which also Anne referred to. Our accommodation location made me think about this as well yesterday evening. So, and here I would like to thank, of course, our host for choosing such a beautiful place, and thanks a lot for your great hospitality. Diplomacy, I would say, is still a conservative field where informal clubs based are common at the same time. I don't have time to elaborate all the following terms such as sauna diplomacy, golf diplomacy, or sofa diplomacy. I believe that for some of you these terms say a lot. Yet I would like to recall that female foreign ministers have their own informal club or network that meets in the margins of major international summits. For example, there will be a meeting at the end of this month, again during the UN General Assembly. This format is great for supporting each other and for empowering women in foreign policy. Though that's the start of Russia's unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine showed that also female colleagues viewed this war very differently, and that often national interests prevailed over the international law. Nevertheless, the network provided an indispensable opportunity for direct communication and exchange of views on this important matter. I believe such informal networks are important, even if they are not gender diverse. So in conclusion, I would like to return to the United Nations and UN Women. As the director of the UN international organizations and United Nations of Estonia at that time, when it was created, I actively followed the process of establishing this body. And Estonia and Mexico were co-facilitators in the UN negotiations, so I was particularly interested in this process. And when the UN Women was established and the former president of Chile was appointed, as it said, it was also discussed that whether a man should be head of this international body, and vice versa, a woman must be head of the United Nations. So as the United Nations elections of the new Secretary General are upcoming soon, so I truly hope that this next Secretary General will be a woman and bring this shift into these international discussions on peace and security. So I stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.